It's an age-old question with crucial implications in this presidential election. What do women really want? President Obama and Mitt Romney are both attempting to answer that question, pulling out all the stops to court women voters. On a swing through Colorado this week, the president portrayed himself as the protector of reproductive health, appearing beside Sandra Fluke to tout women's health provisions in the Affordable Care Act. The Romney camp hasn't forgotten the ladies either. Romney announced a new Women for Mitt coalition this week, led by none other than Ann Romney, to fight back against what it calls the war on women myth. But women aren't only being courted by presidential candidates. They will also be a focus of the party conventions. The issue advocacy group Young Guns Network, headed by former aides of House Majority Leader Eric Cantor, plans to host what it calls a women's pavilion this month in Tampa as part of its Woman Up initiative. Joining me now is Margie Omero, Democratic pollster and president of the research firm Momentum Analysis, and Jess McIntosh, spokesperson for Emily's List. Thank you both for your time this evening.
Thank you.
Margie, let me begin with you. What happened to the gender gap? The last poll that came out, the president was leading among women by 9, but among men by 6. And so a delta there, a differential of only 3, much less than I and many others had expected. Is the gender gap disappearing for some reason?
I don't think so. I think what you're seeing is Obama's had a couple good weeks and some good recent polling. If you look at the average of recent polling, you'll see that that gender gap is actually still there. It's closer to 10 among women if you take a bunch of polls together, and closer to 1 or 2 among men. So I think we're going to continue to see a gender gap. We've had it now for decades in presidential campaigns, and I think we'll see it in November.
So I gather, and just tell me if I'm understanding this properly, you're saying that basically a 9 or 10-point margin among women is still a significant gender gap, and really what has happened, if anything, is that the divide among men has expanded a bit, so the president is doing better among men. It's not that the gender gap, as we had understood it, is diminishing.
Right. And at Emily's List, we actually did a lot of research into still undecided independent women voters. And what we found was that while they were undecided in the presidential election, they cared a great deal about access to women's health care, and they cared even more about issues like equal pay, which, of course, Mitt Romney is on the wrong side of. So that's going to be the kind of things that motivate these women to come out in the polls in November and re-elect the president and send him reinforcements like some strong Democratic women running for Congress and Senate this year.
Right. Well, we can get to that in a second. But, Margie, this is the issue, actually. If I were a candidate and if I were sitting here trying to strategize a campaign, the question I would ask myself is, what argument does appeal to the independent swing female vote? There is a very small universe of such voters, one presumes. We keep hearing the number of swing voters is very small and isolated. Which argument appeals more effectively or at all? The sort of traditional gender issues of reproductive rights that the president is focusing on, or the raw economic issues of jobs and employment that Mitt Romney wants people to focus on? Which of those two is the better, more persuasive argument?
Well, actually, I would give you a third option, because I've been on the road actually talking to those very women, Walmart moms, they're swing independent women who have kids under 18 at home, and they say what they're focusing on is what's going to impact their family. They're really looking for a candidate who's going to speak to them personally, talk to them about their shared struggle as moms, and it really doesn't matter where they are on the socioeconomic spectrum. They are struggling to put food on the table, thinking about college, thinking about retirement, all these key issues, and it includes a lot of those issues that Jess was talking about are women's issues, but they're also economic issues. They may not use the phrase war on women. In fact, they don't use the phrase war on women, but they are thinking a lot of these issues in the context of what does it mean for me and my family?
You know, it's interesting, Jess, if I heard Margie right, that actually was pretty close to the way Mitt Romney frames the issue. Now, I think his answers are the wrong answers, right. But in terms of talking about the raw, what is the cost of sending your kid to college? It's been going up. You can't afford the loan. Food is getting more expensive. Whatever the causation here, that actually was more in the universe of a Mitt Romney type definition of the issue than a Barack Obama definition.
Well, I think that the issue with the Republican Party is that they believe that they have an optics problem with women. They think if we message something differently, if we have a ladies' pavilion in Tampa, that's going to be able to solve the problem. But the problem is that they have a policy problem. They have a substance problem. What they are selling to women are policies that are bad for keeping them and their families healthy. And women understand that, which is why when they go to the polls, I think they're going to be re-electing the president.
Look, Jess,
I mean, I'll give you another, if I could give you an example, too, of it's more than just optics. If you look, for example, former Senator John Kyle, he said, sneering, well, I don't need maternity care coverage. I mean, things that you would think could be bipartisan and pro-family family that Republicans would support, they literally sneer about. And it's not just him. There's plenty of other examples. I mean, Republicans have a history of voting against mandatory breast cancer coverage. I mean, it's ingrained policy.
It's true. We actually compiled all of this data at emilyslist.org. You can see the entire interactive calendar about the war on women, which, use the phrase or not, the policies have been real, and Republicans have been doing this since the House went GOP after the 2010 elections. So everything from women's access to health care to pushes for equal pay to their surrogates attacking women on the trail, it's been really consistent, and that drumbeat has reached women voters, absolutely.
Look, I agree with you. It is far deeper than an optics problem, which is why the idea of having a women's pavilion at the convention is almost...
So the ladies in their parasols.
Yeah, exactly. It's almost
the boys
retail
making the big decisions.
Right, it's almost offensive. You can just imagine the caricature and the sort of the demeaning nature of it. But put that aside, the way the problems and the Walmart moms that you're talking to are dealing with very base level, real life economic issues that are out there. Price of gas is going up again. The price of food is going up. Obviously, maternity leave, whether you can get your kids to see a doctor. These are the real issues. But on those metrics, the president has a tougher sell than he does in some other metrics.
I would argue that that's not true. I mean, if you look overall in terms of the who thinks that the president versus Romney is best able to fight for the middle class, the president wins hands down consistently. Now, with undecided swing voters, it's difficult because they're undecided swing voters. So, I mean, of course, this is going to be a tough election. But I think for which candidate it really has an argument that's about a vision for the middle class and really reaching out to families, both in policy and in how they speak in a natural and warm and empathetic way, I think the president has the advantage.
Yeah, you know, the women that we interviewed at Emily's List all said really specifically the kind of candidate that they were looking for was somebody who understood their daily life. They were more likely to credit Democrats with believing that they ought to have their own health care decisions made in their families, but they were looking for candidates specifically who were community leaders, who were people who had given back to their towns. They talked about teachers, they talked about police officers, they talked about veterans, they talked about the kind of Democratic women that are running with the president this year to help pursue an agenda that's going to be good for women and families.
Look, I've been saying since the first moment, Mitt Romney is the most awkward, least empathetic, least human candidate I've ever seen. Especially to consider he's going to be a presidential nominee, just boggles the mind that somebody that lacking in basic human emotions could get that far. Having said that, if these female voters are still undecided, you've got to wonder what more can be said by a president. And I agree with you, whose every policy favors them to bring them over into the column by November. If you had one closing argument, Margie, what would you say?
Well, I would say a lot of these women are going to be tuning in, like swing voters generally, toward the end of the election and in the last month. And they're going to be watching the debates. They're going to be starting to watch a little bit of the convention, also watching the debates, and really trying to figure out who's really focused on their family, understands how their families work, and can really put themselves in their shoes.
Jess, closing argument, if you could craft it, I'm going to make it hard for you. If you could craft a closing argument for Mitt Romney, what would it be?
Oh, my. I'm really sorry for everything that I and my party have been doing for the last 2 years, 3 years, 5 years. We're going to adopt the president's proposal. We're going to end the war on women. We're going to fight for equal pay at work. And we apologize. We're going to let the ladies' pavilion into the whole convention, and we'll bring the women to the table. That's literally the only thing they can say at this point.
All right. The three of us decide Mitt Romney should not get a single female vote. Margie, let me ask real quick, do you have any polling data or modeling that suggests what margin the president needs to win the female vote by to overcome what most people think will be a loss among traditional white male voters?
Well, you know, it's going to depend a lot on turnout. And right now he's leading with both men and women. So in which case, you know, he'll be okay. I think if we've seen high single digits to low double digits, that's a good place for the president to be. But right now he's in a really good spot.
Jess, you agree?
Yeah, I absolutely do. I think that women are going to come out and re-elect him, and I think that they're going to send him reinforcements. I think we're going to have a strong Democratic Congress.
All right. Yeah, we did get to the Congress. We'll do that next time. All right.
Sure.
Well, the three of us decided the election is over. We've just to call it the election. We can save the next 90 days of talking heads on cable TV. Margie Omero, president of the research firm Momentum Analysis. Jess McIntosh, spokesperson for Emily's List. Appreciate your being here tonight.
Thank you.
It's been the week of the